The sun dipped below the horizon, casting fiery hues across the fields of Kentucky. Ellie, just 9 years old, tugged on the rein of Charlie, her weary-eyed brown horse. He had been her confidant ever since her mother passed away 2 years ago. Ellie knew Charlie was aging, but she refused to believe he could leave her, too. "Just one more ride across the big field, okay? Then we'll go home," she whispered, her voice strained by a tightness in her chest she couldn't quite understand. The ride started slow, Charlie's pace more sluggish than before. Even so, Ellie felt the wind brush against her face, and for a moment, everything seemed perfect. They crossed the golden field, the sound of Charlie's hooves echoing across the open space. But Ellie noticed something was wrong. Charlie was breathing heavily, his head drooping lower, and his steps became uncertain. "Are you okay, boy? We're almost there," she said, forcing a smile as a chill ran down her spine. On the way back, the worst happened. Charlie stumbled, his legs gave way, and he collapsed to the ground. Ellie was thrown onto the dirt, but quickly scrambled to her feet, her heart racing as she saw the horse lying still. "Charlie, no, please, no." She fell to her knees beside him, her small hands frantically stroking his neck, now hot and damp with sweat. Charlie's breaths grew weaker and fainter with each passing second. Tears streamed down Ellie's face as she lay on Charlie's lifeless body, holding him tightly. "Please don't leave me. You promised you'd always stay with me." Charlie's final breath was a faint sigh, and then silence blanketed the field. The girl sobbed, feeling her world crumble around her as the cold grip of loss consumed her. Suddenly, something inexplicable happened. A soft, golden light began to glow around Charlie. Ellie looked up, confused but unable to look away. It was as if the entire field had come to life. Then, Charlie, motionless for minutes, let out a faint sound, and his eyes slowly opened. Ellie gasped, a mixture of relief and wonder filling her heart. Charlie, who had been motionless and lifeless just moments ago, was now breathing weakly but steadily. The golden light surrounding him was slowly fading, as if being absorbed into his body. Still holding onto his neck, Ellie felt his warm breath against her skin. It was real. He was alive. "Charlie, you came back to me." Her voice was a trembling whisper, caught between sobs of relief and disbelief. Yet, deep in her shining eyes, a nagging question lingered. How is this possible? The horse attempted to stand, his legs trembling under the weight of his body. Ellie immediately stepped back, giving him space, but her gaze never left him. She watched his every move intently. "Take it slow, boy. You can do it," she said, her tone encouraging, yet filled with nervous energy. Charlie finally managed to stand, but something about him was different. His eyes, once dulled by exhaustion, now sparkled with an intensity Ellie had never seen before. It was almost as if there was a new energy within him, a vigor that didn't match his old age. As they walked back home, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary had happened. She ran her hand along Charlie's neck, feeling his strong, steady pulse. "Are you really okay?" she asked, almost to herself. Each of the horse's steps was firm, but Ellie noticed something unusual. He seemed more agile and more alert. Every now and then, Charlie would stop and look around as if he were more aware than ever. Ellie tried to ignore the shiver running down her spine, but she couldn't deny that something had changed. When they reached the farm, Ellie saw her father, Tom, waiting on the porch. He frowned when he noticed her disheveled appearance. With dirt-stained clothes and a troubled expression, "Ellie, what happened? Are you hurt?" he asked, rushing down the steps. Ellie shook her head quickly. "I'm fine, but Charlie, he fell. I thought he had." She hesitated, struggling to find words that made sense. Tom glanced at the horse, then back at Ellie, noticing her hesitation. "Fell, but he looks great now," he said, scratching his head. Charlie let out a soft neigh as if to affirm the statement. Ellie didn't press the story. Something held her back from telling her father about the golden light, about the moment she felt Charlie had come back to life. That night, as she lay in bed, her heart was still racing. Her thoughts were consumed by questions with no answers. What exactly had happened in that field? As sleep finally claimed her, one thing was certain. From that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The next day, Ellie woke up to sunlight streaming through the curtains of her room. For a brief moment, she thought everything that happened the day before had just been a dream. But then she heard the sound of Charlie's hooves on the pasture near the window. Still in her pajamas, she ran outside, barefoot, with the damp grass of the dew beneath her feet. There he was, standing with an unusual gleam in his coat and an energy she hadn't seen in years. "Charlie," she shouted, filled with relief but also growing unease. As she got closer, Ellie noticed something that left her puzzled. Charlie appeared completely recovered, with no signs of the fall that nearly took his life. There were no injuries on his hooves or coat. He seemed younger and stronger. The girl stood still, watching him in silence as he approached and lowered his head to her. As he always did. "You're really okay, aren't you?" Ellie whispered, running her hand over his neck. But at that moment, she felt something strange. The contact with his coat sent a slight tingling through her palm, like a current of energy. Throughout the day, more signs appeared. During breakfast, Ellie told her dad she was going to take Charlie for a short walk. Tom, looking at the horse in the pasture, shook his head in awe. "I've never seen him so full of life, Ellie. He looks like a completely different horse." "Do you think the fall did him good?" The comment made Ellie laugh nervously, but inside, questions were piling up. How could an old horse, who should be weak, suddenly be acting like a young animal? During the walk, Ellie noticed more changes. Charlie, usually calm and obedient, was restless, almost anxious. He would whinny frequently and tug at the reins as if trying to lead her somewhere specific. Ellie tried to calm him down, but at the same time, she felt strangely connected to him. It seemed like Charlie was trying to tell her something, but how could a horse communicate? "What are you trying to show me, boy?" she asked as he snorted and turned his head toward the field, where everything had happened that night. Lying in bed, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was behind what had happened to Charlie. The strange glow in the golden light, the unusual energy she felt when touching him, and now this restless behavior. As she stared at the ceiling, one idea took over her mind. She needed to go back to the big field. Something had changed there, and she was determined to find out what it was. When morning came, Ellie was already awake, her eyes fixed on the window. The thought of returning to the big field wouldn't leave her mind. Something had changed, and she felt she needed to discover what it was. After breakfast, she grabbed her jacket and, without telling her father, headed to the stable. Charlie was restless, stamping his hooves on the dirt floor and whinnying softly as if he knew what was coming. "Ready for another adventure, boy?" Ellie whispered, running her hand along his muzzle. The touch gave her that familiar tingling sensation again, but this time she didn't pull away. Ellie climbed onto Charlie, and together they set off toward the big field. The cool morning breeze rustled the trees along the path, but there was something strange in the air. Everything seemed to quiet, as if nature itself was waiting for something. Ellie glanced around uneasily as she guided Charlie along the familiar trails. Each step seemed to draw her deeper into a mystery she couldn't quite understand. Charlie was alert, his ears flicking as though picking up sounds Ellie couldn't hear. When they reached the big field, Ellie dismounted and looked around. The place seemed exactly the same golden sea of wheat, the same hills in the distance, but there was an energy in the air she couldn't explain. The wind blew harder here, as if carrying whispers she couldn't decipher. Charlie began walking gently, tugging at the reins, leading her toward the spot where he had fallen the day before. When they reached it, Ellie felt her heart race. There was something different about this place now. On the ground, among the dry leaves, Ellie noticed marks that hadn't been there before. They were small burned circles in the soil, ranged in an irregular pattern, yet they seemed to form a design. "What is this, Charlie?" she asked, but the horse merely snorted, staring at the horizon as if waiting for something. Ellie knelt down, gently touching one of the circles with her fingertips. The same tingling sensation she had felt when touching Charlie spread up her arm. Startled, she pulled back. The wind picked up, and Ellie felt a chill crawl up her spine. She looked around but saw no one. However, there was a clear feeling that she was being watched. Charlie whinnied loudly, breaking the silence. He seemed impatient, pulling her away from the circles. Ellie, uncertain, mounted the horse again. But before they left, she glanced back at the spot. Something in that scorched earth seemed to be calling to her as if an invisible force was trying to convey something. As they rode back home, Ellie knew that this was only the beginning of the mystery. She spent the rest of the day distracted, her mind trapped by what she had seen in the wide field. The burned circles, the energy that seemed to pulse in the air, and Charlie's strange behavior haunted her. Sitting at the dinner table, she pushed her food around her plate while her father watched in silence. Finally, Tom broke the quiet. "Ellie, is something bothering you? Since yesterday, you've seemed like you're in another world." She hesitated, but decided it was best not to say anything for now. "It's nothing. I'm just tired," she answered, not meeting his gaze. Deep down, she knew he wouldn't understand. That night, while the rest of the house slept, Ellie couldn't fall asleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the burnt circles and felt the strange tingling sensation running through her skin. Something inside her urged her to go back to the field as if there was more to uncover. Finally, she got up, slipped on her boots, and stepped out the back door. The cold night air made her shiver, but Ellie didn't hesitate. She walked to the barn, where she found Charlie awake as if he had been waiting for her. Without a word, Ellie saddled Charlie and led him outside. The full moon lit the way, casting long, dancing shadows across the field. The silence of the night was nearly absolute, broken only by the sound of Charlie's hooves against the ground. As they neared the wide field, Ellie felt her heart race. She gripped the reins tightly, fighting the fear growing in her chest. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, more to herself than to Charlie. When they reached the field, Ellie dismounted and walked over to the spot where the burned circles were. The moonlight illuminated the ground, revealing the pattern more clearly. She noticed that the marks weren't random. There was symmetry, almost like a drawing. In the center, something faintly glowed under the moonlight. Ellie knelt down and began to dig with her hands. When she finally uncovered the object, her eyes widened. It was a small stone, smooth and shiny, emitting a faint golden glow like the light that had surrounded Charlie. The day before Ellie could react, a distant sound echoed through the field, something between a howl and a whisper. She jumped to her feet, gripping the stone tightly as Charlie whinnied restlessly. The sound seemed to be getting closer. Coming from the hills in the distance, Ellie felt a chill run through her body. It was clear that this stone wasn't ordinary, and that she might be under observation again. "Let's go, Charlie. We need to get out of here now," she said quickly, mounting the horse. As they rode back, Ellie knew the stone held answers and that the mystery was just beginning. Back at the farm, Ellie slid off the saddle and put Charlie in the stable. The horse seemed as restless as she was, his eyes fixed on the girl as she hid the stone in the pocket of her jacket. "I don't know what this is, Charlie," she whispered, looking at the object that still emitted a faint glow. "But I'm going to figure it out." The silence of the night seemed to amplify every sound around her, and Ellie felt that strange sensation of being watched once again. She glanced over her shoulder, but the field behind her was empty, bathed only in the silvery light of the moon. Inside the house, Ellie quietly climbed the wooden stairs, trying not to make a sound. When she closed the door to her room, she sat down on the floor and placed the stone in front of her. It was strangely warm to the touch, as if it had a life of its own. The golden light pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Ellie ran her fingers over its surface, and the familiar tingling ran through her hand again. But this time, something happened. A sensation washed over her, like a distant whisper in her mind, words she couldn't understand, but that made her feel connected to something greater. She pulled her hand away, taking a deep breath. "What are you?" she murmured, but the stone remained silent. Ellie then grabbed an old notebook from her desk and began sketching the pattern of the burnt circles she had seen in the big field. The more she drew, the more she realized the pattern seemed intentional, like some kind of code or ancient symbol. It felt strangely familiar, but she couldn't figure out where. Exhausted yet unable to stop, Ellie spent the night staring at the stone and the drawing, trying to piece the puzzle together. The next morning, as the sun rose on the horizon, Ellie was still awake, now sitting on the porch with Charlie grazing in the nearby field. Her dad, Tom, noticed her tired expression and sat next to her with a cup of coffee. "Ellie, you look like you haven't slept at all," he said, his tone concerned. Ellie hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to share part of what she had discovered. "Yesterday, when I went to the big field, I found something a stone, and I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's connected to what happened to Charlie." Tom furrowed his brow, clearly skeptical, but worried by the intensity in his daughter's eyes. "A stone, Ellie. Maybe it was just your imagination." Yesterday was a tough day, but Ellie shook her head. "No, Dad, it wasn't my imagination. There's something out there, something that made Charlie come back, and I'm going to figure out what it is." As she spoke, she felt the tingling sensation again, even without touching the stone. Tom sighed but knew his daughter's determination wouldn't be shaken. Deep down, Ellie knew the truth was close, but she also feared what she might find. That same night, Ellie decided to return to the large field, but this time with more caution. The stone continued to emit its golden glow, now more intense. As if it knew something was about to happen, Ellie carefully placed it in a small leather pouch she found in the basement, fastening it to her waist before leaving. Charlie was more restless than ever, snorting and stomping the ground as if he sensed the impending danger. Ellie stroked his snout, trying to calm him. "I know you feel it, boy, but we have to go back. I can't give up now." With the moonlight lighting the way, Ellie and Charlie advanced across the field in an almost supernatural silence. The wind seemed to carry whispers and distinct words that sent shivers down Ellie's spine. Each step Charlie took made her heart race faster, while the shadows of the trees seemed to move around them. When they finally reached the burned circles, the feeling of being watched returned stronger than ever. Ellie dismounted carefully, her eyes scanning the field for something or someone. As she approached the circles, the stone began to pulse again, flashing light that illuminated the ground around it. Ellie took the leather pouch off and held the stone directly in the palm of her hand. The familiar tingling ran up her arm, but this time it was accompanied by a sound. It was low, almost imperceptible, but clearly a melody. Ellie closed her eyes, trying to concentrate. The melody seemed to come from within the stone, a sad and mysterious sound that seemed to be pleading for help. Suddenly, a gust of wind made Ellie open her eyes. The burned circles now glowed as if the light from the stone had somehow activated them. Charlie whinnied loudly, pulling on the reins, but Ellie couldn't move. Her feet felt stuck to the ground, and the glow around her grew brighter. Then something emerged from between the circles. It was an indistinct figure, almost transparent but clearly human. Ellie felt her blood run cold as the silhouette stared at her as if waiting for an answer. Who are you?" she stammered. But the figure didn't respond. Instead, it pointed to the stone in the girl's hand. Not knowing what to do, Ellie took a hesitant step toward the figure. But before she could get any closer, the silhouette vanished in a burst of golden light. The energy was so strong that Ellie dropped to her knees, gasping for air. When she looked at the stone, she realized it had changed. Instead of its golden glow, it was now cold and lifeless, as if whatever had been inside it had disappeared. Ellie pressed the stone against her chest, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Something had been awakened that night, and she knew she couldn't turn back. The next day, Ellie woke up before dawn, her dreams filled with fragmented visions, the mysterious figure, the burned circles, and the golden light that seemed to consume her. Still, there was no time for hesitation. She quickly dressed and, without drawing attention, went to the barn to check on Charlie. The horse seemed calm this time, as if he knew the immediate danger had passed. Ellie stroked his neck, feeling the connection between them even stronger. "I think we're in the middle of something much bigger than we imagined, boy," she whispered before picking up the stone again. Although dull, it seemed to pulse faintly against her skin, like a sleeping heart. Determined to understand what was happening, Ellie decided to investigate more deeply. In her house, there was an old collection of books that had belonged to her mother, many of them about folklore and local stories. She climbed into the dusty attic and began rummaging through the boxes. Page by page, she searched for something that might connect to the strange events in the big field. Finally, she found a reference that made her stop. In one of the books, there was a drawing that resembled the burned circles and the pattern she had seen. The caption read, "The marks of the call." According to the text, these marks appeared in places where inexplicable phenomena occurred, often linked to the energy of life. As she read, Ellie began to sense a possible connection. The text mentioned that some people believed certain places on Earth held special energy, capable of restoring what was lost, but always at a cost. Ellie swallowed hard as she reread the last sentence, "Nothing returns without a purpose." Could it be that Charlie had come back for a reason she still didn't understand? And what did this mean for the figure she had seen? Questions piled up in her mind, but Ellie knew she was getting closer to the truth. In the afternoon, Ellie decided to share part of her findings with her father. Tom was sitting on the porch, staring out at the field in the distance with a worried expression. "Dad, do you believe there are things we just can't explain?" she asked hesitantly. He looked at her for a moment, frowning. "Your mom believed," he said with a sad smile. "She always talked about energies and how the world has mysteries we'll never fully understand." Ellie felt a lump in her throat. What if something like that is happening here with Charlie? Tom hesitated, but didn't deny it. "If you think there's more to this, Ellie, I trust you. But be careful." Later, as the sun set, Ellie sat in the pasture next to Charlie, the stone in her hand. Even though it was dim, it seemed to pulse in her palm. Ellie gazed at the horizon where the large field was hidden in the shadows of night. "If there's a purpose to all this," she said quietly, "I need to figure out what it is." As the first stars appeared in the sky, Ellie felt that the next night would bring new revelations and perhaps new dangers. That night, Ellie couldn't sleep. Something was deeply troubling her, as if the mystery surrounding Charlie and the stone was connected to an older story, one she had never fully known. Her father's words about her mother kept echoing in her mind. Determined to find answers, Ellie went to the old dresser in his room, where she knew he kept a memory box of her mother's belongings. Carefully rummaging through it to avoid making noise, she found a small stack of letters and a faded leather-bound journal. Her heart raced as she opened the journal and saw her mother's familiar handwriting. As she flipped through the pages, Ellie realized that the journal wasn't just about everyday life. There were mentions of recurring dreams in which her mother saw fields bathed in golden light and heard whispers she described as the call of the unknown. Ellie shivered as she read those words, so similar to what she was experiencing now. One particular entry caught her attention. It was about a day when her mother had walked through the same vast field years before Ellie was born. She described finding a small golden stone buried in the ground, exactly like the one Ellie had found. "There's something special about this place," the last line read. "Something that transcends what we can understand." Ellie's heart felt like it was about to jump out of her chest. Had her mother gone through something similar? And if so, why had she never told anyone? As she continued reading, Ellie found another clue. Her mother mentioned a mysterious figure similar to the one Ellie had seen in the circles. But instead of being afraid, she described the figure as a guardian, someone who seemed to protect the energy of the field and ensure it was used properly. "Nothing returns without a purpose," her mother had written, echoing the words from the book Ellie had read earlier. Now Ellie knew the mystery wasn't just about Charlie. It was something that had been passed down through generations. With the stone in her hand and the journal by her side, Ellie decided she needed to return to the large field immediately, even if it was the middle of the night. Charlie seemed to sense her determination and was ready even before she saddled him. The path to the field seemed darker that night, but Ellie was filled with a courage she had never felt before. When she reached the burned circles, the stone began to pulse again, as if it recognized the place. Ellie placed the stone in the center of the largest circle, and suddenly she felt the ground tremble lightly beneath her feet. The golden light returned, stronger than ever, illuminating the entire field. Charlie whinnied, but not out of fear. It was as if he were trying to communicate with the light. Ellie looked around, and then the figure appeared again, more solid this time. Her voice, which had once been an incomprehensible whisper, now echoed clearly. "You are the key, Ellie," the figure said. "What was lost can be restored, but it is you who must decide what that means." Ellie stood still, trying to process those words. A choice lay before her. But what would be the cost? Ellie felt the world around her slow down as the words of the figure echoed in her mind. You are the key. What did that mean? The figure stared at her with an intensity that seemed to pierce her soul, while Charlie, standing beside her, let out a soft huff as if he too understood the weight of the moment. Ellie tightened her grip on the stone in her hands, feeling the warm, rhythmic pulse growing stronger and stronger. What do I need to do? She asked, her voice filled with fear and determination. The figure stepped forward, pointing at the horse. The bond you share with him is why we're here. But to restore what has been lost, something must be given in exchange. These words cut Ellie like a blade. She looked at Charlie, who met her gaze with deep eyes full of trust, as if he knew she would make the right choice. Lose him? I almost lost him once. I can't do that again, Ellie shouted, her words heavy with emotion. But the figure slowly shook its head. You don't understand. He is here because of the energy of this place. But that energy cannot be sustained forever. Either you release the bond that connects you, returning what was taken, or both of you will pay the price. Ellie felt the ground tremble again, as if the very field itself demanded an answer. Tears began to stream down Ellie's face as the decision approached. Everything inside her screamed to protect Charlie, but at the same time, something deep in her heart told her that he shouldn't be there. Ellie knew that he had already fulfilled his mission by her side. Every memory, every moment of love and learning was part of a journey that, though painful, needed to come to an end. She looked at the figure, then at the stone, which now shone like a small sun in her hands. If I do this, she whispered, will he find peace? The figure nodded slowly. He will be where he needs to be, and his sacrifice will maintain the balance. With her knees shaking, Ellie stepped forward and placed the stone in the center of the circle once more. Charlie whinnied softly, but this time he didn't seem nervous. Instead, there was a kind of serenity in his movements, as if he too understood what was happening. Ellie closed her eyes and placed a hand on the horse's neck. Thank you for everything. Boy, you will always be a part of me, she said, her voice breaking. As soon as she finished speaking, a bright golden light enveloped Charlie and the stone, making the entire field glow like never before. Ellie felt the warmth of the light surrounding her, a mixture of sadness and peace. When the light faded, Ellie opened her eyes. The field was silent again, and Charlie was no longer there. Tears fell freely as she knelt in the center of the empty circle, holding the leather pouch that now contained only a lifeless stone. The figure had also disappeared, leaving Ellie alone, with the starry sky above her. Deep down, she knew she had made the right choice. Charlie was where he was meant to be, and the mystery of the field had been solved. At least for now. Ellie stood up, feeling a mix of pain and acceptance, and walked back home with the certainty that though she had lost something precious, she had also gained something priceless. The understanding that true love lives forever, even beyond life.